Welcome to the Accountants Exposed podcast, where we create light bulb moments for our listeners by exposing the journeys, secrets, and insights of some of the top players in accounting. This podcast is brought to you by Michael Edelstein, Director and Founder of Recruitment Expert, a specialist accounting recruitment agency working across Australia, New Zealand, and Asia Pacific. Hi everyone, I'm really excited to have Nick Sinclair on the podcast, who I refer to as the king of outsourcing for our accounting industry. And I can't wait for you to listen to this. Most of you already know him, but he's the founder of TOA, which stands for The Outsourced Accountant, which is now nearly 2,000 people strong and constantly expanding. And that's because Nick is on a mission to help accountants deliver a better service to their clients and have a greater impact on SMEs. We talked for so long that we decided to split this podcast into two parts. The first being his phenomenal journey of growth and the trials and tribulations of outsourcing. And in part two, I think you'll get even more value as we discuss whether you should or shouldn't outsource, pros and cons, how to avoid the many pitfalls of outsourcing that many firms have experienced. Guys, there's a lot of gold in there. So make sure you tune in for part two in a fortnight. Enjoy. Nick, interesting question for you. You're in 5 or 6 countries now.
5.
US, yeah. Canada, 5, yeah.
It's 5.
So what has it been? And I know you talk a lot about, because you've done a lot of podcasts and speeches and conferences about people and culture. It's one of your big topics. How do you go about maintaining and building? Well, I think building, but then more so for you maintaining a culture cross-border, cross ethnicities, culturally, etc. When it's so much bigger than what it used to be when you first started in your first couple of years. Like, how do you build that, maintain it, and sort of ingrain it into your new staff coming on board?
Yeah, look, at the start, I knew everyone that worked for us, and I'm the first to say now I don't know everyone that works for us. I generally have a genuine care for anyone and anyone that does work for us that needs help that we're there for. But I think that there's a few things. One is culture is a process, and that's something that I talk about, and I could talk about for hours, is that culture is no secret. I mean, read a few books, see what they do, and then just build it in as a process. So, every single team member that joins our business gets a message from me. Every single person on there, every client that joins us gets a message from me. There's ways that you can automate and personalize things to make culture important. And for me, we've been always focused around the little things with our team members. And we used to do this with my accounting practice, when the accounting and financial planning. Like, we used to ring our clients on their wedding anniversary. We'd ring the guys a week before the wedding anniversary, saying, it's your wedding anniversary next week. Have you got a present for your wife? And would joke about it and things like that. Some of them were useless, so we would send flowers to the wife on their behalf. They didn't even know we were sending them. But it's all these little things, and it's these little things that make a big impact. So actually, when you've got a smaller team, it's just understanding who they are. The most important thing for your team is their kids and their family, their husbands or wives, their partners. So understanding when it is their kid's birthday, understanding when it is their kid's swimming carnival, understanding when it's their wedding anniversary. It's all, instead of making them have to stay back and meet deadlines, if they want to be at their kid's sporting event, push them to go to it, but know that they're going to need to do that. And managing your team's productivity and time around what's important to them, which is, we hate to say it's not business. That's not the important thing to them. It's what they do, but it's not the most important thing in their life. So I think that for me, it's around really understanding your people and then automating it. And then as we've got bigger and bigger, I can have a direct influence on the people that I mentor and lead. And if they can then have a direct influence on the people that they mentor and lead, and then it flows down and cascades down, and everything is standardized, everything's a process that they just have to follow, then it's easy to build it. What happens is a lot of businesses don't do that. And, I've always had a genuine interest in, and I've always said anyone that, and this is back when I had my accounting and planning practice before TOA, anyone that worked for us, I wanted them to become a better person. So when they left us, at some point they would all leave us. And I wanted them to be able to turn around and say, you know what, I became a better person by working there. I learned greater skills. I became a better version of me. And I can now go on to my next opportunity. I'm not, ignorant to think that people are going to work for us for 30 years, but I want to be able to help them on their journey and be something that they can turn around and say, that made a massive impact on my career. And I'm thankful that I was there as opposed to having what I call bad divorce when you leave a job and it's not a positive thing. And I think that that's really critical. But for me, it's around just automate and systematize your culture and make it something that, and I teach our clients this, and I often have people say, but if it's automated, if you've got someone sending the message to the 100 team members that started last month, how's that personalized? And I said, because I know exactly who it's being sent to, and when they respond, I'm the one that gives the response.
Mm.
And it's the little things that make a difference. Like, I may not know that it's one of our executives' kids' birthdays tomorrow, but my EA has it in my diary as a reminder for me. So they know that that's happened. They know that I generally aren't good at remembering names, let alone dates of things. Yeah. They know that it's in my diary, but it still feels good when I walk up and say, how was Mary's birthday yesterday? What did you get up to? Or if they're still at work at a time where they should be home because it is their kid's birthday, I do the round. I call it do the rounds. I walk around. I'm like, go. Like, your daughter's more important than us.
Genuine care factor, basically.
You've got to genuinely care. I mean, these people will work enormous hours for you. They make a massive impact to your clients. Yes, they get paid to do that, but you need to have a genuine interest in them.
Have you had to adapt between different countries or geographic areas for the culture?
Yeah, look, it's very different. I mean, when, in Australia, we've got, like, I'm known as the biggest kid within our business. So I'm like the biggest, the biggest idiot around. And I'll drink and I'll associate with our staff. In America, a lot of the times corporates or particularly in the Philippines, someone in my role within the business wouldn't associate with, like, a receptionist. When I'm over there, I hang out with them. Like, I stand around, I help them on reception, and they're like, why are you carrying water around, filling water up? Like, you shouldn't be doing that. And I'm like, I'll do anything that I expect you to do. And I'm not above you. Your role is just as important as mine. It's just a different role. And I think that genuine, like, I don't have an ego, that I don't have an EA running around, handing me my cup of water. I'll go and get a water for someone else. I mean, we've just, in the Gold Coast office, we've just taken on 2 additional office spaces within our building, and we've had 6 global leaders join us. We've got 1,800 staff. I was the one organising the signage. I was the one setting up the computers with our IT guy. I was the one, organising everything and moving furniture between offices. And all these global leaders said to our CEO, one of them went, why is he doing that? And it's like, because that's how we are here. No one's, above anything here. We're all willing to get in and do it. Yes, there's people for roles, but build a genuine connection with all levels of people. You're not better than them. You're just in a different role that serves a different way. And
do you find that translated into your leaders being like that? And then, like, even in the Philippines, did people start to behave differently after seeing that as an example?
Definitely, but I think it's also how you recruit it. Like, I love Trent Innes from Xero, how he uses the coffee cup example. Like, if he gives them a cup of coffee and they don't take that away and offer to wash it up at the end of an interview, he doesn't hire them. So
really? Okay. Yeah, I have heard about it.
I love that story. And I mean, we're very similar. We don't have, I suppose, tricks in the interview process, but we are very, with everyone that we're recruiting, we basically say, yes, we're 1,800 people, but we act like a startup. We act like, if you've got your own cup, you wash it yourself. We don't have people to do that. You do that. So, and you offer someone. So I think a lot of it is, it's what you breed in your culture. And again, you attract what you deserve. If you attract an entitled person, it's probably because the business is entitled. Like, the people within it, like, everyone here knows that if there's a box of stuff to unpack, you do it. Like, you don't just walk past it and go, that's someone else's job. So I think that, the standards that you set are the standards that people follow.
Let's talk a bit more about TOA, because I think that's what a lot of our listeners would be interested in. How big is the client base now in Australia?
In Australia, we're 430 odd clients, so 600 globally, and about 430 of them in Australia.
Okay. What's a typical client?
It's a great question. There probably isn't one. So we've got, right from sole practitioners, people that are starting off, or people that have, I call, downsized their business and gone back to just being them, right up to second tier businesses. So, and everything in between. I mean, when you look at the industry, though, the average accounting firm in the industry is 20 people or less. So that, our average client has 15 to 20 people onshore.
Okay.
But equally, we have a lot of people that are sole pracs. We have a lot of bookies that are sole pracs at the start, and then they grow and they become a lot more over time.
Okay. And are they regional? Are they city? And like, what type of clients do they service?
Both. Yeah, there's no bigger concentration. I think regional was probably slower to adopt the offshoring, and I think that a lot of that came back to small towns. What will people think?
Yep.
But I think that that's certainly, we're well beyond that now. They see the better service. They see the firms growing and employing more people locally because of having a global team. So I think that that's proven. So I think that it's everywhere, and I think that's lucky that we serve an industry that is recession proof. In good times accountants are busy, and bad times they're busy.
Yep. That's what I always say as well. That's why I chose to recruit and specialize in public practice as well, for that same reason. Especially during COVID. It's like people think, oh, recruitment must have gone down. Like, actually, our clients have been working their asses off. And
Yep.
as a result, we've been working our asses off. Yeah.
Yeah, it's flow on.
What's, I guess, how do they come across you? Or what's the typical reason why they would come and approach you?
Look, I think there's typically 4 pain points that the firm can't find people. So, I mean, as you know, unemployment rate in accounting is tiny. I mean, there's anyone that wants a job has a job in accounting. Like if you're an accountant and you don't have a job, then, a bit of self-reflection might be needed. So, can't find people is always one of the biggest problems. I'm working and my team are working too many hours, which leads back to we don't have enough capacity. Or things like last year, a lot of people were growing and busy, but they weren't being able to get paid because of the COVID situation with their clients. So they needed to have cost-effective capacity to still be profitable and serve their clients. So sometimes they don't have the capacity and they're not wanting to charge their clients more, but they're still wanting to increase the business profitability. So they will grow and leverage a global team at the same time as leveraging and growing a local team.
Yep. Okay. What do they typically outsource with you?
Look, I think that, again, it's something you won't be unheard of. I mean, the hardest role to recruit is a senior accountant. So they always come to us and say, look, we can't find a senior accountant in Australia. Can we find one in the Philippines? And we're like, well, if they existed in the Philippines for a quarter of the cost, do you think that, it's just unrealistic. So we always talk about, pushing the work down so that we can grow the people locally. So typically it's administration's always a big one. Accountants never want to admit that their accountants are doing too much admin. I always have it on. No, they don't do any admin. And I'm like, what about this, this, and this? And they're like, oh, actually, they do that, but it's not that much. And I'm like, well, how many admin do you have in the business? Oh, we've got 1 for 8 accountants. It's like, dude, if you don't have 2 admin to 1 accountant, then there's something wrong. Like it should be the other way. So I think that for us, it's definitely around admin. It's definitely around executive assistants for partners to try and free them up, to give them the bandwidth to think about. And then the biggest role that we do have is accountants and bookkeepers. So they are 80% of our roles, but they're not typically the roles that we would guide someone to go into first. It's free up the time of the partners, free up the admin on the accountants, and then start to grow and develop, because you won't have time to train the accountants if you're still doing all of the other things you're doing.
Which means you'll probably stuff up the onboarding process for the actual accountants.
Yeah,
for sure. Yeah, okay. And what would walk us through the process? So a client comes to you, they're interested in outsourcing something, they back in the day probably actually picked up the phone and spoke to the client and led them through the whole process. What does that look like?
So typically they would come through the journey, obviously, of marketing, or once they find us, they'll talk to one of our BDMs, and they would basically take them through and learn more about the firm. What are the biggest problems that the firm's having? And then if outsourcing is a solution that would work for them, and in some cases it's not. Some clients that come to us, they go, I've got 50 super funds that I just need done. And we will say, look, go and chat to our friends at Seamless. They can do the 50 funds. And once you got that under control, we can then build a proper people strategy to help you actually build a long-term strategy for capacity. But if your initial need is just to get rid of this work right now because you're going to miss the deadlines and there's penalties and that, then go and use someone that we will refer you to. And then we'll build a proper people strategy. So for the ones that genuinely do need it now and have the ability to build a long-term strategy, our solution is not a short-term fix. It's a long-term strategy that you need to invest the time and effort into to make it work. So we're very much around, if that's the case, we go through what we call a solutions meeting where we'll go through and talk about what their pain points were, what are the different options they have, how does outsourcing actually work, what's actually involved. It's not just sending work to someone and not talking to them. It is a global team member. They're part of your team, part of your culture. They want to be part of where you're going. We take them through that journey, and then at the end of that, we either mutually agree that it's a fit or it's not a fit. If it's a fit, then we basically engage them. They sign an agreement with us. We then go to a kickstart meeting where we kick off the relationship. We start the recruitment process, and then we have a 6-month onboarding journey as well, which includes training for their new team members and teaching the clients how to be successful at communicating with a team member in the Philippines, the culture of the Philippines, all of the things that we know, that what I call proven frameworks, where clients have failed. And, I failed when I first started in the Philippines in a lot of areas. So we've had 600 clients go through these globally. You know what works and we know what doesn't. So we help our clients to not have to go through some of those things that we know are just common failures of firms when they don't know what they don't know.
What are some of those common failures?
Treating them like a team member as opposed to an outsourced staff. So a lot of people, when they come to us, they think, all right, I'll just send this work to them. I'll talk to them once a week. It's like, no, you wouldn't have someone come into your office and stick them in a boardroom and give them a bunch of work and then say, don't talk to me, I'll ring you once a week. Like, you need to engage them like a normal team member. You need to, have training plans. You need to know them. You need to have a genuine interest in them. They need to know where you're going. They need to understand where their career is as part of your journey. So all of the things that we have with an onshore team member, they need to do. So that's probably the biggest one, is that they just don't, they treat them like an outsourced person, not like they would a team member that's sitting in their office.
Anything else? Like any other pitfalls?
Oh, look, I've got a list of them because we had a list of proven frameworks, but I think that for a big one's around training. Like, we find that accountants are not great at training. It's one of the reasons why we set up a training business to help them. We find that a lot of accountants are great at showing them how to do a process, but they don't teach them why they're doing it, which is why our training shows the why, they show the how. But I think a large amount of it comes back to communication and management of workflow. A lot of firms, when they first start, they don't, like, we ask them, how often do you do like a weekly meeting or daily huddles with your team locally? And they're like, oh, we don't. We just walk in the office and talk to them when we need them. And we're like, well, even that's not effective locally. The amount of hours that you would waste by doing that, if you had a structured, and we follow the scaling up philosophy, Vern Harnish's, where you do weekly meetings, daily huddles, monthlies, town halls, quarterlies. If they follow that process, their business will become a lot more effective and their communication will be a lot better. So teaching them how to communicate sounds really obvious, but it's not, with a global team. And it generally makes them locally a better business because they implement the same practices locally. And
how long does it take, like, from essentially contacting you saying, yeah, we probably are interested in getting an offshore team to help us with, as you said, probably a lot of them need capacity, I would say, and to grow that capacity, to actually having a staff member up and running and doing the work? How long does that process take?
Generally 45 to 60 days.
Okay.
And the reason why is that we obviously, by the time we go through the process of, are you the right fit for us, or we the right fit for you, 2 weeks to source candidates, interview, offer, 30 days notice. Most of them are in jobs already. They're not sitting there, not in a job. But in saying that, if a client came to us and said, look, we have just won a major client, we are desperate, we need someone to start literally in a week, we've got a huge talent pool. I mean, we get over 25,000 applications a year for roughly 1,000 roles. We can go through our database and go, right, well, these are all the ones that aren't working at the moment that are local that we could employ straight away. So we'll just basically target them. But we don't generally like to rush it. It's building a team, you need to build the right team, and it shouldn't be something you do rush, but where we need to, we can. But generally we say, look, that's why we're building a people strategy. It's not a short-term fix. It's fixing a long-term.
And the clients are involved in that recruitment process?
Yeah, definitely. So I say we do all the heavy lifting, we do all the interviewing, all the testing.
Yep.
We put forward 3 to 4 applicants that could do the role. It's more around them than going with the person that they feel the best with. They're all competent. I mean, if you think about, we get 25 to 28,000 applications a year. We filter it down so that they're only seeing the best 3 or 4. So I mean, if you times that by 1,000 roles, there's 3,000, 4,000. So we're filtering 28,000 down to 3,000 for 1,000 roles.
And what's the success rate of your, like, in terms of, when I say success rate, the clients that come on board, like how long would they normally stay for, and how many would actually not commit to you after however long your contract is?
Yeah, we probably have a 20% fail rate, and if we look at why, and that's been a big part of the last 7 months for me, and that's my focus this year, is what makes people successful versus not. And even within our clients, we've had some clients that have been with us for the whole journey, but some of them have had literally no turnover, and others have had 20% a year turnover. So you look at it and go, what's the difference between the businesses? And one of the things that when you have a global team, and particularly in a country that's not a Western country, it's very different. It exposes your business's gaps. It exposes where you don't have systems. It exposes where you don't have process. It exposes where you're not good at managing people, but you've been able to get away with it because someone's been sitting next to you. So the problem is that because of the exposure, that it opens up all these wounds that businesses need to fix. So the businesses that have got good systems, good process, or they build those over the years, are able to succeed a lot more than, some of the businesses I've seen come in, they win some awards, but they're horribly run and they fail, and then they turn around and like, it's you. And it's like, hang on, you've turned over 3 people locally and you've turned over 3 people with us in the last 6 months. Like, I like you, but look in the mirror and realize what the problem is. You don't have any systems. You don't have any process. Your team members basically telling us, and basically they never talk to you. It's like, you're not setting them up to succeed. You're setting people up to fail, which is indicative of the results that you're getting. And some people don't like to see that. Some people don't like to hear it. You can only help who you can help.
What's the minimum contract when they come on board?
So it's an ongoing contract. So it's a 12-month contract, which just continues to roll. But people can give us notice, and it's generally a 90-day notice period. But we always have the proviso that as long as it's not performance related, we've got 131 roles open at the moment. Like, if you were to turn around tomorrow and say, look, we're out, like, this just isn't working for us, there's a good chance that someone that's recruiting, one of our other clients or a new client that's recruiting, that you've already pre-trained this person for 3 months, 6 months, 12 months, 24 months.
Will be useful.
They'll definitely want that. So we generally will release them prior to the 90 days. Yep. But we always have, the contract is 90 days, and people always question us about this, but the reality is we can't just turn around the employee and say, you're fired, see you later. Like, there are contractual terms within their employment where we need to give them notice. We need to make them redundant if they're not going to have a job. So we generally say 90 days is sufficient to do all of that and meet all the requirements. But most of the time we place them with other people well before that.
What's the average size of your, that your clients would build out to in terms of the offshore team?
Yeah, look, it is skewed because of the growth every year. Like, if you look at our average team members per client, it's not a lot. It would be like 3. But if you look at the tenured ones, if they have 10 people onshore, they'll generally have 10 with us offshore. So, like, if you look at it and go...
And that's the ratio you recommend?
Yeah, look, 1-to-1 means you're doing it well. If you're really executing it, 2-to-1, meaning 2 offshore to 1 onshore. But again, that's easier for a small firm. Like, we have some small firms that are 5 people onshore and they'll have 10 with us. So their ratio looks amazing, but they're a smaller business. If you've got more than 50 team members locally, we generally, 50 team members, we generally say, half offshore, half onshore. So if you had 50 here, you could have 25 with us. If you've got more than 100 onshore, like 1 to 500, it's generally 25 to 40% that they would have with us. And we've got some clients that are 70, 80 staff. We've got others that are, 1 person. So it is skewed by the size of the firms and how long they've been with us.
But average is around 3.
Yeah. Across the business, if you go 1,800, 600 clients, there's 3 people each.
Yeah. And you find that's usually a mix of there'll be one EA or VA and then 1 or 2 sort of bookkeepers sort of thing, or?
Yeah, look, it is 80%. Yeah, it's 80% accounting and admin. But what we do find is the client generally will start with that because it's their pain point. But as the team grows and evolves, then the mix of admin versus technicians, what I call technicians, the accounting and bookkeeping technicians, does start to balance out a little bit more. And then you bring in things like EAs, you start bringing in business analysts, you start bringing in, depends on the firm, like some of our big firms that have got hundreds of people onshore, they have IT people with us, they have learning people with us, they have HR people with us. Like, yeah, it starts to diversify outside of that.
What are the typical outcomes your average clients get from using TOA or from outsourcing?
Look, I think the thing that we typically see with the local firms is their local firms grow headcount. So they don't lose staff, they grow their team because they're able to grow the business. The biggest benefit onshore is that their local team members' careers are fast tracked. So instead of it taking 7 years to get to a manager, they might get there in half the time because they're no longer having to do the lower level work they were doing, which means that the partners have more time to have them 2 people in an interview with a client. So 2 people, like the younger person's learning and growing quicker, which means they can take on the relationship quicker. So we've definitely seen that. I mean, capacity-wise, obviously, it helps firms. You look at the multiple, what is success for a global team member? Typically, they will be getting 3 to 7 times their revenue. So if you look at Australian accountants, you're lucky to get 1.5 to 2.5 times. Bearing in mind that the cost base is lower, so that does contribute to that. But their output, it can be equivalent to someone in Australia once they're trained and they've been in that role for a couple of years. So I think there's, that then flows on to profitability of firms. Firms are more profitable because of it. It has a lot of flow-on effects.
What would you say to firms because I've had so many clients that have done or have gone down the outsourcing route and then brought it back in-house after a period of time, like numerous of them. Andrew and a couple of other people that Andrew even knows have gone that route as well and it just didn't work out. What do you see? Is it like, did they choose the wrong provider? Did they take the wrong approach? Like, what would you say to them?
A bit of both. I think, there's definitely providers out there that give them a desk and a person. We are very much, we serve the accounting, we have training programs, we have, people management platforms for them to manage their teams remotely with our technology. There's all these things that we do for the people we serve, but even with us, there's people out there that have failed with us. And I think that a lot of the times it's reflecting on why are other people succeeding in it, but I didn't?
Yeah.
So what went wrong? Like, where were we? And a lot of them they did it. Like, we've had many clients that have come back 2 years later and they're like, we've now got our stuff together. We've got our processes right. We've got our systems right. We've got the delegation right. We've got the right people that can train them. So sometimes it's just the firm's not ready. Sometimes the firms are running so fast, they're not looking ahead, that they're not really, it's just too hard. Like, they just don't have time to slow down and go, what's our 5-year people strategy? What are the people we need locally? What are the people we need globally? And how does that fit into, and how do we invest the time to make it work? So where it often doesn't work is where they just don't invest the time in their people. And I think a large amount of the time we see that locally it has the same effect. They can't attract people. They can't retain them. They might attract them, but they can't retain them.
Yeah.
But, yeah, I think the big difference is the ones that fail most of the time, their system and process isn't great and they don't have the ability to train.
Do you help with that? Like helping them help them create the processes necessary, help them use the technology they need? Or
we definitely have partners that we refer them to. We often, and this is, like I said, one of my things is now, how do we make every client successful? But, I talk to a lot of accounting firms and some of them you just can't help. And I talk to all the business coaches in the industry and I'm like, what's the main thing that you actually coach the accountants about? And they're like, 70% of it's mindset. They have this wall in their head of why they can't succeed, or they have this wall in their head that they won't go backwards and work extra hours and train the team and have that so that they can have a better life in 12 months. They're just caught in the moment. So a lot of it is the mental psychology. Most of the coaches are doing mental psychology, and then they're going, all right, well, implement capacity, do this, do this. The accountant only sees the things that they implemented, like, oh, that made such a big difference. Like, no, your actual mindset was the first thing that needed to change. So I think for me, it's around, you can't help everyone. Some people, I had a lady last week. She was like, it didn't work out the way we wanted it to be. And I talked to, she'd lost 5 team members in 6 months. She only had 5 team members with us. She just kept turning them over. And I spoke to her and got her side of it. And I spoke to the employees that used to work for her. I rang them and said, look, what went wrong? I spoke to our team and they're like, Nick, we hate to say it, but she was just like a lunatic. Like, she was unorganized. The business had no idea. They had no process. They had no systems. They spoke to me once a week. It's like you're setting them up to fail as opposed to setting them up to succeed. And some people are just so busy, they just don't think about, in 3 years, I want to be in a business that doesn't rely on me, because they're too busy being busy.
Okay.
And that's okay if that's what you want to do. And Ed Chan talks about this all the time. If you're still doing tax returns when you're 65, you've built a P&L, you haven't built a balance sheet. And he talks about a balance sheet being your people. Invest in your people and they will invest and grow your clients. But if you don't, guess what? You're going to be the one doing the work.
So basically, to summarize, I was just thinking in terms of clients that you wouldn't recommend trying outsourcing. Essentially, it's people that don't have systems and processes and are not, number one, and number two, not willing to actually commit to treating and training the offshore team as much as you would your onshore team, and even better, because you actually, from what I've heard, they need more attention.
Yeah, look, I think
the beginning.
Yeah, look, I think the system and processes, you don't have to have them to start, but you need to have a desire to build a business that only has one way of doing things. So we call it the TOA way. We only have the TOA way. You can't do things your way, and I can't do it my way. We do it the TOA way. And we don't have all of those systems and processes, but we're building them every day. Every time we find something that isn't structured and systematized, we build it. So if a firm's not willing to go down that journey where they can legitimately build a business that isn't reliant on a person, because they've got a process that is the driver, not the people doing it, and that you can plug any people into it, then it will be too hard for them. And people that don't have a longer term strategy around how I want to grow my business and how I want it to be successful and how I want my team to be successful, if you're just looking for a quick fix of capacity and make more money, then there's easier ways than going down the journey with us.
What are the easier ways?
Send it to one of those other outsourcing companies that will do 10 tax returns or 20 tax returns, because it's cheaper than having someone locally, but it's not as effective as building your own team. When you sell your business, and this is where a lot of people get caught out, if you're outsourcing it all to a company and I'm an accounting buying your business, what am I actually buying? I'm buying a client list. But if I buy a business that is automated, systematized, that has rock star employees, that doesn't rely on the owner doing it, I'm buying a business that I don't have to be buried in. So when you go to sell it, you're going to get a higher multiple, because basically one business is relying on the owner sending all the work to someone doing a short term. The other one's basically a business. It's a lot more attractive. So you're buying a balance sheet as opposed to an income.
Speaking of different outsourcing companies, there are so many these days, because I get emails, I don't know, at least once a week.
So do I.
Yeah, because I think I'm in the accounting industry, which I am, but not an accountant. So, from Philippines, from India, from Vietnam, different places now, offering the services to me or in partnership, for our clients. How do you guys compete or differentiate yourself?
This probably sounds arrogant, but we don't compete. There's plenty of people that have come in to play second, and that sounds really arrogant, but they don't truly serve their clients. We're the only provider that has a full team locally supporting you as an account manager, supporting you from sales, supporting you from local leadership. We have local leaders in the Philippines running it. We've also got international people there. We are here in the market and we're very present. I get emails every week from outsourcing providers saying, look, they think, because they see the outsourced accountant, they think we're an accounting firm. And I'm like,
exactly.
So one, they're not doing their due diligence. I think that the other thing is we're very active in the community. Like, we are participants in the accounting industry. A lot of these people are people that may have lived here and moved back to India or moved back to Vietnam, or they may have someone living here and their mates are running it there. They're not active in the community. Like, we have a thriving TOA community. We run our own events. We run our own conferences. We're active participants in all of the industry events. We're active participants in everything that's going on. We have a genuine interest. So because we're active, majority of our competitors are like, I don't even know them. Like, I've never heard of them. It's like, well, how are you actually going to get any traction when you don't actually do anything for the industry? You're just wanting to take from the industry. Yes, you can offer cheap labour, but that's not what people want. They don't want cheap labour. They want a solution which is ultimately going to help their business longer term.
What made you choose Philippines compared to, I don't know, India, Vietnam, or?
Yeah, look, I'd love to say I researched all the different countries at the start. I was in the Philippines for the EO board retreat. When I went back, I had no experience. I had used India. So my accounting firm and planning firm had used India, Vietnam, Sri Lanka. We had mixed results. The Philippines, our model is very different because it's not send a job, get a job back. We are basically, here's a dedicated employee for you, but we're the legal employer. Because of that, they have to have strong communication. Philippines within Asia or Asia Pacific is the number one for English language. It was an American, it was a state of, I call it a state of America for 50 years. They're taught American, they're taught American English from, birth. It's part of their schooling curriculum. It's very Americanized. So because of that, it's a lot easier one of the challenges that we get a lot of clients from India and Vietnam, and it's not because of the quality of work. The barrier is the communication. So when you don't have to talk to them because they're doing the job and sending it to you, that model works. But when you're managing someone on a day-to-day basis and the language is a barrier, it really is a struggle. And that for me is the Philippines, written, spoken language for our type of model works the best.
Okay, so different models and different type of providers for different issues, essentially. Yeah,
definitely. And we're friendly. I call it friendly. Like, we send work to some of those other providers, the ones that we know do a good job. Where we can't help a client because they need this short-term fix, we'll refer them to them. And we do joint events together and things like that. And people are like, aren't you guys competitors? And we're like, no, we complement each other because we're very different offerings.
Interesting. Yeah, okay. That's a good insight. They say hindsight is 20/20, and I guess what would you have done different in your career or your business?
I love this question. I'll do many things differently, but then equally, I often look back and go, if I did things differently, I wouldn't have got the result I got.
Yeah,
and I wouldn't get the result I'm doing now by doing things differently. I was young and dumb. I grew too fast. I learnt the hard way in a lot of things that if I had that knowledge, I wouldn't have had to go through it, but I got that knowledge by going through it. So it's sort of a catch-22. But I think for me, my attitude around reinvestment into the business and profitability was always, I've got a long-term focus. I'm young, so it doesn't really matter. I'll put everything back in and I'll grow really fast. But I think that the thing that I learned during the journey was that I was great at sales and marketing and communicating and client service. I really sucked at systematizing and process and operations. So the actual delivery. And when you're growing too fast and you don't have those foundations, it's easy and you become the cracks become exposed when you're growing really fast. The little things that when you're not taking on a lot of new clients, you can cover up where you don't have standardization. But when you're putting on like 100 people a month, if you've got your recruitment functions not set up to recruit 100 people, you're set up to recruit 20, the cracks become exposed pretty quick. So I think for me, the thing that I learned and I would have done differently was sometimes I would have slowed down.
Yeah.
Like sometimes I would have went, you know what? We've got to go slower to go faster. That doesn't make sense to go, hang on, we've got to slow down to go quicker. But it's like, get the foundations right. And we're in that sort of phase now. Like we've got a technology team of 25 people. Both some are employed in Canada, Australia, all the Western countries, and then the Philippines. And we're building a people management platform, and we're plugging all this tech together. And for me, it's frustrating. It's because I want to triple the business. We've got the market that wants it, but if we did that, then the delivery of how we managed our people and our culture for all the people that work for our clients would suffer, and our clients would have a different level of service because we would be growing too fast. So we've, the last 2 years, we've still been growing by 50%, but that's slow growth for us because we're getting the foundation solid to then be able to, blitz scale. Accelerate hard and really grow fast, but doing it in a way where the delivery of your experience to your clients and your team members doesn't suffer because of that growth. And that's something that we've always been trying to be conscious of is, yes, we want to grow, but we always want to deliver to the people that we serve right now, because without them, then yes, they can leave and we can outsell and put new people on, but it's not the business that we want to be in. We want people to genuinely succeed because their success is our success. And I think that's a different thing, that our product is not software. Software in a lot of cases, and again, I've never had a software business, but if you're selling software, you're just wanting people to use it. We're selling people, and it's a partnership where if the firm don't maximize and get the benefit out of the person, they don't need the person. And if they don't need the person, then we don't have a job for that person. So it's a true partnership. Their success is our success. It's not like buy the software, if you keep paying for it but you don't use it, we're still getting paid. It's not a one way, or it needs to be two ways, otherwise it just doesn't work.
Yeah, I understand. Nick, what's the best way for accountants to get in touch with you if they wish to learn a bit more about your services?
They can go to our website, toaglobal.com. I open and love, communication directly with me. My team hate when I say this, but I'm on all the social medias, LinkedIn, Facebook, Twitter, Instagram. LinkedIn's probably the one where I'm most active if you search Nick Sinclair. Always happy to have a chat to people.
What does your downtime look like, given how busy you are?
I'm training for a half Ironman at the moment, so 6-hour race, which will be fun. So that's my downtime. Jet skiing, coaching my son's basketball, kids, family, wife. I have a major passion for snowboarding. But, being COVID, we couldn't travel last year. It made it a bit tough, so I had a year of no snow. So that's ultimately what I love doing.
Actually, speaking about COVID, how did that work with Philippines, given that Philippines was locked down for so long, in Manila especially?
Yeah, look, we had 2 hours to move, close to 1,800 people out of the office and into their homes. So, look, we've had roughly between 20 to 30% of our workforce working in the offices, and we've got a bounce back plan over the next 6 to 9 months to get back into the office where we can, where it's appropriate. Some team members that are high risk, we won't move back until a later stage. But look, it wasn't easy. It was definitely hard on our team. We've gone from having where we can manage and control the environment that team members work in to now working in, 1,800 different homes, and having to put in place the technology and process and systems to be able to manage it. I think we've done a good job at it, but, it's definitely not been without its challenges. And, the Philippines is challenged. Obviously, it's a developing country, so the health system and that is brilliant in some areas, but not in others. And, the COVID cases, the vaccines and that will be delayed in those sort of countries. But, I think that in a lot of cases, the Philippines has handled it probably a lot better than most countries, given the volume of population they have.
Yeah. But it hasn't affected the delivery to clients that much?
No, I mean, there definitely was sometimes. I mean, the internet and power is obviously challenging there. Just purely on the grid. I mean, within our office environment, we have 3 redundancy internet, so one goes down, the other does. I mean, if the power goes off, we can run 24 hours without any power coming into the building. So there's all these things, redundancies that we don't have at the home. So the internet has had some latency and some challenges, but largely we haven't seen productivity rates significantly drop. In some cases, they've increased. In some cases, they've been a little bit worse. So it's largely been okay. But, I'm looking forward to, when we can get back to people say we'll never get back to normal. I mean, I've just doubled our space in Australia, like our office space. Like our team work here because they want to work within the office. So I think that it will go back to where it is, particularly in countries like the Philippines where infrastructure isn't as great as some other countries.
Nick, last question. Who would you want to have a drink with the most in the world, past or present?
Oh, that's a really, really good question. I mean, I'd love to have a drink with Richard Branson. Like that was, I mean,
that's on my list as well.
The original one, and I think the other one would be, like a Jeff Bezos, like anyone that's sort of. And I'm lucky that I do get to meet and like talk to people that are successful. I seek people out that are. And a lot of them, this is the one tip that I will give anyone, a lot of really, really successful people are really lonely. And what I mean by that is that no one asks them to go to lunch. No one asks them to do things because they think that they're too senior and they wouldn't want to or have the time. But a lot of the people that are successful in their life and journey want to give back, and they can do that. And for me, learning from someone like Branson or Jeff Bezos or anyone that's been really, I mean, Elon Musk, but I think he would be too intelligent for my conversation with him wouldn't be intelligent enough. So, yeah. Look, I think
what would you ask to Branson?
Yeah. I'd love to know why he started on that journey. And I know that I've read all his books and it's well documented in many things, but, what still drives him at the age, and he's not old, but what still drives him now to do what he does and live life. And he has this thirst for life, and you can see it in everything that he does. And for me, it's around how have you been, like, why did you start being like that, and what's made you sustain that life? Because you've been in it a long time, you've built a lot of amazing things, but yet you're still running 100 miles an hour.
Yep.
And you're still creating wonderful, amazing things and making a massive impact. So, what really drives you? Because I think that sometimes you can sit back and bask in your own glory and go, I'm doing so well. I just want to retire. And one of my mates just sold his business for, 8 figures. Like, he never has to work again. I'm like, so mate, which beach are you going to be sitting on? He's like, good luck, Nick. I'm going to do my next thing. I want to make an impact even more. So I think that for me, it's about what really drives people. Like, how do they do that? And that magical question of how, what did they give up to get to where they are? Because no one successful didn't give up anything. They gave up something. Yeah. And for everyone, it's different. So that's always something that I'm intrigued by, is that what did you actually give up? Not what did you do to get there, but what did you give up to get there?
It's a good way to finish. Nick, thank you so much for your time. It's been an absolute pleasure.
Mate, I appreciate the opportunity to come and share my stories and my knowledge.
Thank you so much. Thank you for tuning in, and hope you enjoyed this episode. Please like our podcast and share it on LinkedIn, Facebook, Twitter, or wherever it is you hang out, so more people can benefit from these speakers. Also, please subscribe on our website so you get all of our latest episodes. And if there's anything else I can help you with, or you have speakers you'd love to hear from, or some feedback about the current episode, please feel free to send an email to michael@recruitmentexpert.com.au. Until then, take care, and I look forward to connecting with you in the future.